what mastery is from a lot of different perspectives, from our own perspective when it comes to our school, but also from just the general perspective of how do we define being a master at something, and what limitations are there, and understanding that there's so much that goes into that word. It's something that I've struggled with off and on through the years, but it's something that we shouldn't be afraid to approach from so many different perspectives. So anyway, that's the topic this evening. And if you don't know me, I'm Coach Bill. I know you all know me. Here I am in Atlanta as we travel this beautiful country, teaching our beautiful sound and vibrational therapy practice. We've met so many amazing people, and we continue to grow and expand our offering. One of the focuses really is in this space of how do we offer what we're doing from a mindful perspective, and make sure we're doing it with intention and purpose. So for me, it really is coming in that space of I struggle sometimes to define what we do. So I am going to talk about what mastery is first, and then we can open up for discussion after. But what I see in this space of just determining how we define ourselves or how we label ourselves, and I talk often about removing the labels, but from a perspective that we're going to talk about what mastery is, we should see how it's not how we practice. It's not how often we practice. It's more about how we approach the practice. And it can be a great lesson in mindfulness when we approach things from the right way. So again, we could sit there and practice day in and day out and day in and day out and get better and better and better at the one thing we're practicing. But does that mean I'm a master of that topic or that practice? From our perspective, we look at all these different tools that we can use in sound and in mindfulness and say, I might be a master of that tool, but am I a master of the whole program, right? So as we teach with everything, it starts with being present. So if we're not fully present in the whys, and if we're not focused on what our intention is with the practice, and if we're not paying attention to the practice itself, then we're kind of just spinning our wheels. And are we ever going to get better? Well, practice does make us better, but does it reach us to that place of mastery? So if we want to achieve mastery, we have to be deliberate and passionate, and see it not just as a chore. Because as somebody who through the first few decades of my life meditated every morning at 8 o'clock, but never did it with deliberately, and didn't understand what I was supposed to do with it. It was just a chore on my to-do list. So every morning at 8 o'clock, I'd meditate. I'd sit there and focus on my breath. And then as soon as I was done meditating, I'd get up and get back in go about my busy day and get in my car and get frustrated. Because traffic was bad or whatever it is, I didn't use the meditation deliberately or with intention. I was just doing it as a chore. Check, did that. So the truth is, just because we practice something over and over and over, that doesn't make me a master. I did it for 20 something years. I didn't master the practice. I just did it. When we go out and search the Googles for information on what makes someone a master of someone, some of these ideas are really misleading. Or even some of these books that I've read through the years, like one book that says it takes 10,000 hours of practice. 10,000 hours of practice are required to achieve mastery. Well, let's say that you practiced something for 8 hours a day, every day. It would take you 1,250 days to become a master. That's 3.5 years. If you did it every day of the year for 8 hours a day. And who has time to do that, right? I watched a lesson from this gong master who said it took him 20 years to master the gong. But my question would be, how do we know? How do we know we mastered it? Who's the judge? Said that after 20 years, you are a master. And why didn't they say that after 15 years or 10 years? I tend to believe that intention in everything we do makes a huge difference. If during those 20 years of practice, that gong master spent half of the time he was practicing thinking about something other than the gong, well, didn't he waste 10 years of his practice? It's all about perspective. I think when it comes to mastery, the way I see it and the way I define it is we should take some of these steps. And the steps are always to ask, what's my intention? And what is my goal? And when we can align our goal with our intention, and the goal might be to become a master, but what's the intention behind it? We have to focus on that. What is my intention with the practice? And why am I doing what I'm doing? What's going to be the outcome, right? Is it a label that says I'm the master? I'm the master of the universe. Well, you know what? I practiced living in the universe my whole life, so shouldn't that make me a master, right? But if we don't have an intention or a goal, how are we going to know what we're doing? Again, we might just be spinning our wheels. We might be practicing something that doesn't even align with our passion. One of the things that I focus on in the way we're presenting mastery in our lesson plan, the new one that we have coming up again, is that we should be able to break down the practice of mastery into achievable parts. Because if all we're focusing on is the big picture, then we get so caught up in the end goal that we don't practice being present in the intention of what I'm doing today. So every specific part of what we're choosing to master requires its own bit of practice and study. So for instance, if I'm practicing to become a master of sound healing, then I should be studying every piece of that practice. If I choose to master crystal singing bowls, then that's one of those achievable parts that I'll continue to practice until I understand the ins and the outs, the ups and the downs, and everything about those crystal bowls before I move on to the next piece, and then the next piece. And then I continue to grow, but I don't stop practicing the original pieces, because if I stop practicing, then doesn't that mean I fall backwards? So then I continue to practice more and more and more, and they become seamless as they work together. And when we're practicing on all these different parts, we need to give each and every part our full presence and attention, because passive practice isn't going to lead to improvement. If all I'm doing is sitting there playing my bowls, or if all I'm doing as I'm striving to become a master of mindfulness, if all I'm doing is practicing sitting in my meditation without improving it, then I'm not going to get any better. If I'm not fully present, and how can you be fully present in a meditation? How can you not be fully present in a meditation? Well, it's easy. I used to do it. To master one thing, we can't multitask on a lot of different things, right? How can we do 20 different things at the same time and become better at one of those things? Once one part is mastered, we need to move on to the next part, and then we begin to add all those parts together, which makes us a master of all those tools. Another thing that's really important when it comes to mastery is we have to be willing to open up ourselves to criticism or direction or redirection, to feedback, because no one can master something on their own, because we might be practicing something and it might take us so far off course of what we should be doing. If we don't have somebody observe and correct us, how are we going to know that we're on the right path? How can we refocus if we're not willing to listen to somebody else's perspective? What really makes a master better is challenging our comfort zone. No one can master something if they stay in that comfort zone. Trust me, I tried. Don't push too fast or too hard, but we have to push ourselves to the edge and then come back. I pushed myself to the edge of what I understand about this practice, and then I'm going to push myself over that edge a little bit further every time I do, and then I come back to the comfort zone. And eventually it gets further and further and further out. The boundaries of my practice begin to spread. We have to maintain some motivation by being comfortable with the practice, but then we have to find the passion to challenge ourselves and realize that sometimes the passion gets tested when we're working to achieve something, because so many times we might stumble or we might not see ourselves progress. But the goal of mastery is to find a way to express our passion without ever having to think about it. I can say I have a passion for mindfulness. I can stand in front of 50, 100, 1,000, 2,000 people, and I can talk about mindfulness for days and days and days and days. But I couldn't always do that. When I first started, when I was on my journey of becoming a master of mindfulness, I stumbled, I made mistakes, I looked like a fool oftentimes, but you know what? Those things made me better. But it was through paying attention without judging myself and finding the message that resonated with me, and then trusting that that message is going to resonate to those who are willing to listen, and those who they didn't fit within my space. It's okay. And I always ask why. Why am I saying what I'm saying? Why do I want to master this thing? What is the message I want to put out? Because when we can find our why and understand that that why, as we get deeper and deeper into our practice, is going to change, because we're peeling back so much layers, so many layers of stuff, releasing the expectation, desires to be something different than what we expect ourselves to be. But for mastery, we start aligning ourselves with the passion that exists here. And if it doesn't come from here, then why am I spending my time on it? If it's not heartfelt, if it's not something that warms my heart and makes me feel passion, then why am I doing it? Asking why is so important, because I don't want to spend years or months practicing something that's not going to align me with my passion and purpose. But understanding that mastery takes time. It's not just about picking up a mallet and striking the gong. It's not just about writing a great meditation and recording it and putting it out on YouTube. It's not just about knowing which chakra is connected to which bowl. It's not just recognizing the energy that we're putting out is being received by others in this space. It involves all of that and more: practice, purpose, and intention. Mastery begins to hold value beyond what we saw on the surface, because as we dig into what we're passionate about, it awakens new passions and new challenges. So one thing that's important to me is to not see that mastery means you're the best in the world, or you're the best gong player ever, or you're the best meditation teacher I've ever experienced. Who gets to decide that? Who's the best at this thing that we do? Because it's all different in this diverse space that we work in. The different. I've been in a lot of sound baths that I didn't personally enjoy, but I saw so many people enjoyed. It just didn't resonate with me. I've listened to a lot of meditations that I felt the passion of the person leading it, but I didn't go into that space of understanding the why. So who's to say who's right or wrong? Who's to say who's the best? Our work is so complex and so diverse, whether you're mastering mindfulness or mastering sound, or just starting out as a practitioner, or just reading a book about it. It's always changing. Our life and our work is always changing. Perspectives and practices differ from one person and one tool to the next. The way somebody defines a drum master is different than the way I would, right? Knowledge and technology are always being pushed to the limits, and those limits are being tested over and over and over again. Mastering a skill is difficult and it's admirable, but we're mastering more than one skill in our work. We're mastering a whole collage, a whole toolbox of skills. That's what makes us great. Being a master of drums wouldn't make me a master of sound healing, would it? Being a master of leading a guided meditation wouldn't make me a master of mindfulness. I can just lead a great meditation. But what about all the other pieces that go into that? In our world, mastery takes a combination of skills and practice. It's not just about playing our bowls beautifully. It's about holding space. It's about leading that session with intention. It's about understanding how when I play my bowls beautifully, I'm moving energy, I'm shifting, I'm helping people relax or release or engage or let go. So when it comes to mastery, we're not looking for someone who's the best in the world. Again, being the best in the world is subjective. Our work requires us to be passionate more than perfect, to be mindful rather than knowledgeable, to be fluid rather than rigid, I believe in our work, we should push the boundaries of how we're taught. We could listen to somebody's perspective and hear it through our own perspective, and then take in the lessons that resonate with us. And that be our passion. When we open our mind, we begin to come up with our own perspectives. And the master should be speaking from their place, not from somebody else's place. I shouldn't go to that gong master and take all of his lessons and say, the way I've been doing it for all these years is wrong because the master says this is the way to do it. But I could take some of the lessons and the messages that he's putting out and say, I get that. So I can merge that into my practice. And that makes me the master of my practice. Again, being the best at what we do is subjective. So who's the judge? We are. Our work requires us to be passionate more than perfect, right? That's what we want to focus on. We should be willing to share our perspective, not from a place of authority, but from a place of sharing. That it's not my way is the right way and you're doing it wrong. No, my way is my way. And I hope you can see my passion for it. So saying I don't need to be the best in the world, to some, it might sound like a cop-out. I could tell you my stepdad would say, why wouldn't you want to be the best in the world? Why do anything if you can't be the best? And I would say, you know what? Who gets to decide that? In fact, I would probably say, who has time for that? Who has time to sit there and wait for somebody to judge us? Because you know what? I have a message to share. And my message is different than anyone else's message. And doesn't that make that message perfect from my perspective, from our perspective? It can take a lifetime to be the best at something, but to be great, to have a passion, and to be able to share that passion, isn't that what this is about? That's more practical and it's far more accessible than striving to be the best. But this isn't easy. Mastery takes practice, as I said. It takes commitment. It challenges us, but it's something that anyone who's passionate about something can do. If you're passionate about something, if it makes you feel something here, it should move you to continue to want to learn, to pay attention and be present and ask, what am I working for? What is the intention and the goal? And what am I even mastering? Honestly, am I mastering sound? Am I mastering mindfulness? Or am I mastering my passion? Am I mastering my message? Once we know what we want to master, then we need to find all the ways that we can to acquire the mastery. In our courses, we provide a lot of information. We offer a lot of guidance from our mentors and teachers and myself. But in the master level, we challenge our masters to do their own research, to find their own message. And the message that we ask is, teach us something. Teach us something about your perspective in this practice. Because I don't want to create cookie cutter teachers. I don't want everyone to teach the way I am teaching, even though it's the best. No, I don't want to do that. We have to understand, and I truly understand that everyone's different. Every approach is different. Everyone has their own intentions for the practice and has their own end goal. Often, when we're working to achieve something, we struggle to know where to go with it or how to even proceed. And that's where a mentor would come in. That's where a teacher could come in. That's where we should reach out to others in the field that we're studying to say, this is where I am. What do you think about it? And remember, when they share back with you, they're sharing their perspective on it. So don't take their perspective as dogma, just see it as their perspective. Purposeful practice and research are so important because it's so easy to go down some specific rabbit hole, some unspecific rabbit hole, until suddenly I realized I've wasted hours on Google on a subject that has nothing to do with the intention and the goals and the purpose of what I'm doing. I just followed this journey down and suddenly I'm like, oh my gosh, there went 3 hours of my time researching something that has nothing to do with this. So what we need to focus on is being on point. on being purposeful. Now, that doesn't mean don't want to push the boundaries of these lessons. And maybe that 3-hour journey down that rabbit hole is helpful, but we need to make sure it aligns with my intention and goals, because intention turns the focus to purpose. Rather than just getting lost in the research, I have a purpose behind what I am doing. And one of the things I find most difficult myself and for other students, they're afraid to ask for help. So many people are afraid to ask for feedback and practice. But that's really key to becoming masterful at something. If we don't get feedback, how are we ever going to know where we are, as I said earlier? Some of those messages that when we're afraid to ask for help, it makes us feel like we're not good enough. Or am I relying on this other person when I'm the master, right? But here's the truth. If you're uncomfortable speaking in front of people, then you need to practice. If you're uncomfortable speaking in front of a group of people, work with somebody who can help you step out of that. The messages that we keep giving ourselves aren't real so many times. That message that when I first used to stand in front of a group of people and I got that knot in my stomach and I'd over prepare and I'd have all these notes and I'd be reading my notes and that paper in front of me blocked off my passion. I had to start challenging myself to stop telling myself I'm not a good speaker, because I did that for a long time. I had to stop telling myself that I don't want to do it when I really did. I had to stop with the negative self-talk and begin to pay attention to the message that I was putting out. And then when that message came from here, then I could see those people that it connected with, and that motivated me to keep going. And eventually that knot in my stomach went away. That fear melted. Purposeful practice might make us uncomfortable. In fact, I think that discomfort is part of the practice, because nothing great is ever achieved by staying in our comfort zone, right? If all we do is sit back in that space of comfort, how can we ever master anything? The biggest step in mastery, I believe, is to recognize the moment that I find my passion, to recognize that moment that I've almost ascended. The point isn't about being a master, but it's about taking what you love to the next level, about embracing what I've discovered, then push it to the next level, to take it to new heights, to not just arrive at the level of good, but to push yourself to be great from your own perspective. I believe that even the title of master is something only we can decide. It's where our creativity comes alive. It's where our passion is foremost in our life. And suddenly, when we're aligned with the mastery of and the purpose behind what we're doing, other skills and other ideas start to flow into the mastery itself. And the mastery is the culmination of what we know and what we can do with all that information. And we don't want to be that wise old owl that just sits around and says, ooh. We want to be that wise master who shares the information as often as we can, because what good is studying all this stuff if we're not willing to share it and finding that passion for sharing? It becomes this amazing cycle. And as we reach what we might call master, the opportunities are boundless, and we're so open to experimentation to share that passion in so many different ways. And it doesn't have to be standing in front of a group of people. It could be writing. It could be recording. It could just be listening and holding space. But I believe ultimately the level of mastery is never done. I think a true master is always looking for ways to surpass what's already been done for themselves, and to share and to speak and to learn. And I stand in front of every class when we talk about our intention at the beginning of a class. I say, my intention is here to share my passion for the subject, but my other intention is to listen and learn. Because I think the skills that we develop on the road to mastery are truly unique. We start discovering those bits and pieces that fit into our toolbox, and we feel that ascension when we don't focus so much on the label. We don't have something that's saying,